I'm BENJ RBM, and this is a track breakdown of how I made Dream for my Pick and Mix EP. I started this track about a year ago. It was about a year, not a year to make, but it was a year of just keep coming back to it, listening to the old sections, adding new sections, and then taking out the bits that I then felt didn't quite work, replacing that with new stuff, and then so on. As time went on, my production ability got better. I knew where I wanted to take my sound. I had more inspirations of where I wanted to take the track. So yeah, every time I sort of came back to it, I added something new. Tried not to delete too much, so I was still left with loads of layers. There was a lot of stuff I couldn't delete because that helped the track flow. But yeah, it's just over time, it's stacked and stacked and stacked. The intro basically starts off with this sort of arpeggiating noise, just made in Massive. It's pretty simple, really not much to it, and I thought that sounded a bit circus-like, a bit clowny, I guess. Also, I've got orchestral drums in my Say Something track, the other track, part of the EP. So I put some circusy type orchestral, quite cinematic drums really, in with it. So then together, just created what I thought was quite a nice build for the intro. The next job was to sort of fill the intro with effects just to make it flow. So you've got noises sweeping in, panning from left to right, a few drones, a few rises, a few impacts, some industrial ambience, just all coming together to create a underlayer. So underneath this as well, I've also got some vocally type ambience as well. So I've got freeze tails from the vocal sample that I used.
Oh, you all of the time.
Whether I use that or not, I'm still going to use the ambience from it, like here, and also as well in the drop as well. It just keeps, there's loads of reversed ones, which just helps keep it interesting. So there's there, and then. So even if I don't end up using that vocal in this final release, that vocal has still made me get these elements to fill up the rest of the track, and even if the vocal's not in there, they still fit with the track. So I think that's really good to just keep adding stuff, even if it doesn't sound that great, even if it's a bit random, maybe even a bit cheesy, a bit bait. I think still add it, play around with it, make it fit, because then even if the original element doesn't fit, all the other stuff you've chopped away from it and edited to sort of make it fit, you can take away maybe the original sample that's not quite hitting for you, and you're sort of left with all these unique little, well, whatever you create from it. In this case, it's ambience, and then I've got a couple other vocal ambiences as well, which is basically that fills up the entire intro. Just flows and swooshes, and a few sub drops. The basses start sneaking in from the drop. Drums. Moving on to the drop. Basses were one of the first things I created. Now, the actual bass sounds have actually pretty much all changed, but the MIDI notes and the way it sort of the way the basses fit together and play hasn't really changed, just the sounds of the bass. So we've got the main lead bass. This was made quite recently. This used to be two different basses, sort of like cool and responsing with each other, but there was kind of too much going on, and each bass was not as fat as they could be, and once they just stopped working together for me, basically. So I decided to make it into one bass line, using, this is sort of one of my classic basses I like using in tracks. I've just resampled it here from Massive, just basic saturation compression. This is a really good technique here, just splitting a multi-band compressor into the different bands, and then processing the highs and the lows and the mids differently, just to get a faster sound really. Yeah, resampled that out and then layered it in this noise also from Massive, so like a gritty crumble, I guess. Again, resampled, added some more noise to that as well, just to help it flow nicer. And then both these sounds together, you've got the gritty. I think working with audio, it's easier to chop up, like where you can see that I've faded out the audio. With MIDI, sometimes when you cut it, it might not end exactly where you want it to, and it also means it will bounce out any automation that was there previously. And with that, you can, it's just much easier control over it, which means much easier control over things clashing, which means overall you're just going to have a better mix. The next is all the basses that fill it up. So again, this sound wasn't originally that sound. That sound was originally, I believe, that. So that I fiddled around with a Massive patch, made it kind of more uplifting. That's mainly sort of comb filtering in this one. I'm actually not going to open the patch, just because. But yeah, that's into comb filtering. I recommend it. You get some mad stuff. So there's that bass filling it out, and there's also, so there's a serum bass as well. This one here. This sound started off quite differently, but as the sort of project moved along, I just kept fiddling with the patch. It was quite a prominent bass in the song originally, creating kind of like quite a nice horn, but it was clashing too much, but it's still in there. It's like one of those elements I was saying I've just kept there. You know, came back to it, thought it was a bit bait, but it didn't need to be removed, didn't need to be taken out. Just creates a nice little gritty fill, I guess, a little rise, ready for the next bass note to come in. Favourite part of the drop of the basses is these little fills. Now I actually got these noises from a sample pack, which is called the worst sample pack ever, but it's, you know, there's that bit. Prime samples, but together. And then layered that with a Massive bass that I've bounced out. You probably hear that one in quite a few of my other songs. Those together create that, which is the nice fill leading into the next part of the bass. So this is quite a few layers here. It's basically a serum patch, a sine, a noise, an LFO, more comb filtering, love comb filtering, back to that gritty noise, so that was the same patch, just a different LFO, a little bit of a tighter LFO on the actual grit of the noise as well, but just helps this sound be in context with the main bass. It's also supplying the highs as well as the other noise in the patch for this sound. And then I've got a toy dog, and I've got a real dog. Fill out the mids, give it some more power, give it more of a live feel, make it a sound that you think could be real as well, instead of just synthesized, I guess. All of those together. Moving on to the drums. The drums probably got changed the most due to finding where I wanted to take my drum sound over the last year, and getting better at making drums, and just some of the drums I made just generally sounding terrible. So I've kind of, this one big group contains all of the drums that I've sort of made over time, different tracks on and off that I've sort of decided have worked or not working, and I've finally settled on the ones that are working. And I haven't deleted anything because I never know when I listen to an old version of the track, sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, that was actually really working in the end, and at least I've still got it there. Obviously there's many ways you can do, you could sort of save a new project, that would be a cleaner way of working, but yeah, as long as it's organised for you, that's the most important thing. I think important layers that I did end up keeping within drums, because I didn't really keep any of the kick and snares that I used in this, just clicks and noise really. So the clicks are a few clicks layered on top of each other with shuffles, more snaps. This is a really cool layer which I could really advise people using. This is just some white noise automated, and it just makes it sort of adds a tail for the snare, and it also creates a sort of rise into the snare, giving it sort of a lift. It sort of takes you into it, and then it's a nice release, and the release gets longer over time. And then at the end of a couple of these, you've just got a break, and then filling that up with more snaps. More snaps again, and then the rest are pretty much still snaps. Where have I got? Layered with kind of a low snare for some punch there. And that's just creating the slap and pretty much the layers behind the drums. Coming to make the final kick and snare, I dragged in the drums from my track Fine Dining. I felt like there was some really strong drums I made in that track, so I took the drums from that project, which is very simple. Just some hats, rides sort of filling out the top end, your kick snare, classic BENJ RBM click, which I've decided I really want to put in as part of my sound. I'm really enjoying it. I've been using that click ever since I made it, in 2019, and I've only been finding better ways to use it, so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, just your classic, which creates some more hats filling it out. You probably noticed some of them are delayed, playing them on their own, and that's just to make the snare wider. So these ones don't actually hit on the snare, so it gives more room for the snare's transients or the click's transients, and generally is going to make the snare a bit wider. Really cool trick. Obviously, when you solo in it, you can hear that they're not quite in time, but all together, you're not going to know. But you're going to have wider drums. All those elements that I had before, all those drum elements, makes the drums nice and wide, lots going on, keeps just rolling over. That pretty much sums up how I made the track. There are a few other hats dotted here and there, filling up the track. Got more layers like a triangle coming in. That's pretty much the elements that are making up the track. Honestly, just keep adding stuff, even if it doesn't work. Then if you're making it fit properly, instead of just dragging it in without context, you're going to be left with something usable for it. Even if it's just a second of audio, then it's just going to make the track more interesting. Instead of having block components that definitely have to work, you know, you just keep adding, well, I think that you're just going to keep adding shit, but then if you're trying to incorporate it and trying a lot of ways to incorporate it, like I say, you're going to be left with something, which is basically the entire basic of this track, really. Thank you for watching my spread and tell on how I made Dream for my pick and mix EP.